are not very well. So, all right, let's try it again. Briefly, to summarize where I've been, when I was a 16-year-old as a junior in high school, I was invited to go to Boys State. I didn't know what it was, and I showed up at this event and was very unsure. What I was starting to say was, right about this time, I was already sensing, and I'm not sure how the timing works exactly, I was already sensing that maybe God was calling me to ministry, and I was reflecting on that. Donna and I were already going together. We'd been going together for several months during my junior year of high school, and I don't know whether I had told anybody about my interest in ministry, but here I am at this, Boys State event with hundreds of other boys, and it's all about leadership. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what kind of leader am I? And I don't even know what this is all about. And I remember going out one evening on the campus of NAU, and it was the first time I'd ever been there. Only time I've ever really seen it very much, other than just driving past it. And it was one of those moonlit nights in Arizona, such as we have here in Cave Creek, where the moon is so bright that you can see without lights at all. The moon creates a shadow. And I remember going out there with my Bible, this Bible, and just needing to have some time to just reflect. And I don't know what it was that drew me to the 139th Psalm, but I began to read that psalm, and I had a little flashlight with me, and I remember vividly realizing, hey, I can read this without even having my flashlight on. And I don't know how long a period of time of just real meaningful communion with God in a way that honestly I don't know that I had ever experienced before that time, when the Lord seemed to just kind of encourage me about His presence in my life, and the fact that He knew what was going on, and I may not know what I'm doing, but He knows what He's doing, and that's a good thing. And so I reflected on every phrase of this psalm, and ever since then it's been a real favorite, a favorite of mine. In fact, I even have in my notes, I won't read it for you, a little piece of paper that I wrote about that evening. Thank you, Jesus, etc., for the experience of last night. It was so meaningful to me to think about God's presence in my life, His power over all my life, and His presence in my life. So I'm not going to read it out of here, the King James Version of the Bible. I'll read it out of another version of the Bible that's easier for me to understand, and later that I reflected on more. Here's how it goes, and I'll just give you the sense of it. It's really about God's transcendence, how God is bigger than anything, and you can't get away from God, and God's immanence, how that God is so close to all of us. And so in the first 6 verses, we see David, the psalmist, reflecting on the fact that God is all-seeing. And the next 6 verses, the fact that God is all-present. And the third 6 verses, that God is all-creative. And the fourth and final stanzas, that God is all-holy. So let's take a moment to read through this. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all together. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain to it. And I remember reflecting on that and thinking, Lord, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what you want from me. But you know my thoughts from afar. I felt all alone in that moment. And I was encouraged to know that I wasn't really all alone. He says, such knowledge is too high, too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain to it. And then he goes on to talk about God's omnipresence in the next 6 verses. And in the psalmist, I discovered, I didn't think of it that night, but later I realized, in part, this is a little bit of a fearful thing, the fact that God knows everything about us. He knows all about what we're thinking and He's before us and behind us and around us. And that can be a frightening thought. You're never away from God. And so the psalmist begins to talk about, well, maybe I should get away from God. So listen to what he says. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning, it's a beautiful phrase. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even and the light around me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. Yeah, even when I'm, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I can't get away from you. And no matter what kind of darkness I feel in my life, even there, you are with me. And then these verses, speaking about God's immanence. The first one, maybe we would say, the first 6, maybe this is about God's omniscience. He knows everything. And then the second stanza about God's omnipresence. He is everywhere. But here we see the very personal nature, the immanence of God, that God is intimately involved in my creation. Listen to it. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. And then he reflects, how precious are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I'm awake. When I awake, I'm still with you. And then he goes on in some verses which are rather jarring to us at this point. But here he speaks about God's holiness and his zealousness for God's holiness. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O I hate them with complete hatred, and I count them my enemies. Here he identifies with God and his zealousness for God. And then in these final closing intimate words, which are really rather profound, after he said about God is everywhere, God sees everything, God made me, God is absolutely holy, there is no place I cannot go where God cannot find me. He says in the final phrases, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. A beautiful psalm which reminds the psalmist and us that no matter where we go, there he is. And no matter what we think, he knows what we're thinking. And no matter how far we think we stray, he goes there with us. The beauty of God's omniscience, his omnipresence, his immanence, even his holiness, and that in the midst of that, he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my, and really the phrase means my anxious thoughts, my anxieties. See if there's any grievous way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. It was a couple years after that, because I've come back to this psalm many times, that I began to turn portions of this song, of this psalm, into a psalm. And I'll see if I can remember how it goes. And I'll close with this. The song that begins with the beginning of the psalm and ends with the end of the psalm. Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. before a word is even on my tongue. You know it completely, O Lord. You are around me, behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your presence? Where can I flee from your spirit? If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, even the darkness is light around me. Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. Before a word is even on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, O Savior, and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any way